Join us at your own university. Like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. You're not going to want to miss a bit of this.
I think we're on podcast 6. Is that right, Alicia?
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Six in numerology, as I happen to know. Party trick here is a number of the universal friend. Universal friend. I don't know what that means, but here we are at podcast 6. I think how that does relate to what the topic is today is yoga, because one of the main tools or perspectives in yoga, and when I think of yoga, I think of a non-dualistic yoga, is our 3 pillars of food, sex, sleep. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just leap from there. Both
food, sex, and sleep. Who
food,
doesn't
sex,
like
and sleep.
food, sex, and sleep? Everybody
Exactly.
likes food, sex, and sleep.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I want to say, like, yeah, it's absolutely yogic. It's absolutely the 3 pillars, but it's also, just in case you guys don't know, it is literally your gravity reflex system. And so food, sex, and sleep, when your adrenals go off, when you get stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, you no longer can digest, sleep well, and you don't really want to have too much sex because you don't want to reproduce. So when you have these things going on, you have less stress in your life, your nervous system is better, and your gravity reflex system, which is like the basis of your nervous system and your endocrine system and how they work together, you thrive.
And
So
it's no coincidence. So sorry, what's the last thing you were going to say?
So it's super important, both for yogis and for Westies.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing is, yoga really, as far as I've seen it, is a system for life. So it's really about anyone and everyone. And when I say yoga, I don't mean just postures. I don't necessarily mean postures at all. I usually don't actually. But I'm thinking of what helps the human being. So you just put it to us. Boom. And yeah, I mean, I also thought of the fact there's so many things you could talk about there, but if you don't get enough, if those things aren't balanced, you have problems, just as you explained. You could go into any detail about how you have problems, but one I think of is, and this is what I never understood when I was going out more, partying more, is why is the whole world, setting everything up to have sex most possibly when they are drunk, or if not drunk, it's late at night because everyone's been going out partying all night. The last thing you do when you really should have been sleeping all night is to then have sex. If you want to have good sex, it's not the best time. You're kind of setting it up exactly the opposite. Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And just, okay, so I've gone through like some pretty, I've just had like, if shit could be thrown up in the air and just like explode, that's been Thursday through to today.
And we're going to podcast about that later too. Please continue. This audience, we're going to be podcasting about not the details of that.
Surrender, and like freaking out and all the bad, nasty things coming out. And so, but in this, like falling away and this surrender, I'm exhausted, right? Like I'm just drained physically and I'm exhausted. And last night, I think I went to bed at like 8 o'clock at night, right? And there was just like, there was no way. Like Devin came over and crawled in bed and I'm just like, yeah, no, like nothing is happening. Like I don't have anything in me. My parts weren't operating, like operations were down. Like it was like my body was just like, no, I'm too stressed. I haven't had enough sleep. I haven't had enough food and nutrients and positivity in my life to even work when it came to sex. And I think we can have a lot of compassion and forgiveness for one another and not take things so personally on the sex front, when we know that our lover, our spouse, our mate is tired. Yeah. Right? Or hasn't been eaten, like they haven't eaten all day, right? It doesn't come up. Plus, like if you've been eating really bad, I don't know what's bringing this up, nothing really, but I know that when you eat really bad, like you can get smells.
Oh yeah. Well, what you eat makes all sorts of difference. Yeah.
So then you don't really want to have sex if your
Yeah. Not to
partner's
mention the mood. If you don't have enough sleep, your mood is, can be crap. I'm sure you can
right.
go for a while, but not forever, as you put it. So what is, I haven't heard it the way you put it. I love that. The gravity reflex. Can you just say more about that? I haven't heard that term, even though of course these pillars I
Yeah,
understand.
so it's actually a term that my mom uses. It's chiropractic. It
Okay.
is, from what I understand, it is like the basis of the nervous system. It is rest and digest. It is everything that is. I wish I could explain it even better. Like I'd have
I
to look
always
it
wish I
up.
could explain things better.
Right, but it, from what I gather, it is like the base. It is truly our grounding system. So it is the resting. It is all of our organs functioning correctly. It is that baseline. Even more so than put into action would be the actual sleep and reproduce and eat. Right, digest, rest, and reproduce. Um, but that's like the action piece of it. It's everything that has to come before that for the body to work, and the nervous system to work great. So my mom does a practice called NERI. She's a doctor of chiropractic, neural emotion reflex integration. And what it does is it resets your nervous system, everybody. Fantastic. Find a practitioner near you, especially if you've
Near
gone
you.
through any kind of trauma. Huh?
I said near you.
Yeah, near you, near you. Also great
That was
things that are
not funny.
pretty close is an OT, neural organization technique, and
Okay.
NET, neural emotional technique. All chiropractic practices that do similar things to NERI. So you can find somebody in your area. I think it is probably the most important thing to help her reset the nervous system, um, without having to think too much and do so like your own processes and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it helps you to release that stress in your body so you can rest. So you can, you want to have sex, you want to reproduce, even if it's just for your own personal pleasure and enjoyment. And you can end like bad cravings and negative cravings and stuff like that. So you have more of an appetite. For me, it definitely saved my life when I had adrenal failure. I've always had celiac disease, and I don't really know if I would be alive without NERI, in all honesty, because my gravity reflex system couldn't even put that into action. Like I wanted to sleep all the time. Yeah.
And these are things. Isn't NERI something you can get through your own university?
I forgot about that, but yes, we have a whole certification program. It's taught by my mother and her associates. We put it together. We house it on our own university, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, we have.
And not to mention yoga training as well, right? Given we're talking about yoga,
Yeah,
just to let
yeah,
people
we
know.
have
Yeah.
twist yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
So the 200-hour level is online. The 500-hour level you have to travel.
Well, who doesn't want to travel? I mean, now probably no one wants to travel,
Alaska.
but otherwise, oh well, yeah.
We could go someplace else though, Jason. We could have a retreat
Well, let me tell
someplace.
you, my brother
I
would
had
love to go to
support there.
Alaska. My brother would love to go to Alaska. It was certainly magnificent, beautiful. Okay, so we're talking about resetting your system, or you could say bringing your system into balance. So other things I think of are like Chinese medicine, herbs, acupuncture. These
Yeah.
are things that have this effect of balancing you out. Which, if you're off balance in some way, like if you are exhausted but you're so wound up you don't realize it. I've noticed sometimes after certain acupuncture sessions, I will just feel tired, but in a good way. Like I could get that good sleep and I want to do it right there, right then even,
Yeah.
Should we go through to say what we can off the top of our heads now about each part, food, sex, and sleep? And then ideally we'd have podcasts about each of these things more than once, but we've definitely talked
We can
about them
totally
overall.
talk about each one of them, for 20 minutes easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just dive into it. Why don't you do your take, I'll do my take, and then.
Sure. and or I'll just say what comes to mind. Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing about food, I just keep thinking of my, and I'm not trying to, I didn't plan to pitch all this, but I am thinking of my, my holistic life coaching training. Um, and I honestly, truly, I love the content. It's really, as I mentioned to you the other day, just in personal conversation, it's like, it's the missing piece. And I think of the 6 categories that I've believed in, you know, apart from you, but now certainly as well, much more because you go so deeply into them. The first one being about the body, or as I say it when I'm on like Facebook or whatnot, I call it the material realm. And that's the food realm. And I learned a lot of interesting things through that training from you about food. I hadn't known the term, which many maybe of you do, food combining. And well, that's what comes to mind most. There was, oh, right. And the, now I'm kind of thinking of different parts of the training, but the cycles of when you eat or what you eat at what time, at what age, and this sort of thing. In any case, food obviously is important. Food will make you look one way or another. It'll make you, as you mentioned, even smell one way or another. It'll certainly make you feel one way or another. Food is not as important as water, of course. So you can go without it for a while, and some people eat more than others. I think you eat less than me generally, from what I can tell, by far.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily good. But I don't know if I actually eat less. I just eat peanut butter, which
What?
is high density or high caloric food. So if you eat 1,000 calories of peanut butter, it's still 1,000 calories. I'm just not full, right? Luckily, I don't have that much of a hunger response. No, I'm relearning all about that. For me, food has saved my life when it came to my cancer. Like it was, and then with celiac disease and gluten intolerance, like it's not an intolerance. I hate when they call it that, because literally if I eat gluten, I'm sick. I have it coming out at least one end, if not both, and I get depressed and it's just bad. So it's an allergy for me. So food is like this huge thing, and it's had a lot of power in my life. In the last 6 months, I'm going through my own journey with food again, just rebelling on it because I almost have a resentment towards it right now because I don't want to focus on it. I don't want it to be as important as it is. So this podcast is really perfect as a reminder that this is one of the 3 pillars of life. Lish, just, you know how to eat. You know how to eat for you. You've written books about it. You've created trainings on it. Like, just do it, dear. You've saved your life 100 times, right? So really, we have one rule at your own university, and that's if God didn't make it, don't eat it. And now I'm really
not 80% of the time, at least.
At least not 80% of the time, yeah.
Just to
I
be a little more
that piece out, just to keep it easy for them. 20% of the time you can eat whatever. But this and really understanding low caloric density foods and the fruits and the vegetables and stuff, and being able to fill up on those. So for me, I think one of the main things I've been doing this past year is I'm going through my perimenopause. I'm going through all this stuff. Everything is starting to change. I'm starting to look different. And I just wanted to, first I wanted to take control of it, and then I just wanted to piss it all off. And so I think just having a lot of compassion for yourself, remembering to eat plenty of food, know the difference between foods that are high in calories and low in calories, and eat ones that are low calorie, high density foods. So fruits and vegetables that you can eat a ton of, you can get really full on and feel really great. I think that's my take on it. We all need to eat more, probably more good nutrient food.
Exactly. Well, you're tapping into so much, and it's such a big category. I totally recommend anyone to get guidance on it, like I'm doing. I mean, anything from where I lived for a bit, I could go to the market and they had a nutritionist on staff, as I mentioned to you, for free for customers. I don't know how they did that, but you know, wow, make use of that. Or um, and also when you are shifting what you're eating, it's not necessarily like you might have an adverse effect to something good if your body's not used to it. And in a way, something I learned in one of the trainings I did recently, especially through WildFit, is, you know, figuratively, I could say you're ahead of the game if your body is sensitive to foods that aren't actually healthy for you. And that's what I've had to reckon with a lot. Like, I never had to think twice about anything I ate, because it's not only food eating, it's also digestion and elimination. And from a yogic perspective, or also human perspective, these three stages are equally important aspects of food. And, you know, so for me, it was just eat and everything was fine always. And everything was super regular. We won't get too much into it, but, you know, but I wasn't necessarily eating the healthiest foods that are going to let me live the longest I'm going to be able to, as a human being, you know, mechanically even. And, but as I've begun to eat better, eat more vegetables, especially, and fruits, as you mentioned, you know, it's taken a bit of getting used to, even in my system. So I just want to put that out there for people. You know, it does therefore take some guidance, I think.
Yeah, and they do call it, like in the gravity reflex system, they call it digest.
Oh,
It's
perfect.
the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
do we have time to hit the other two, or should we?
Yeah, let's just do it. Rest.
Okay. Yeah, so food, sex, sleep. All right, yes, rest and sleep. I mean, I just think of the yin yang. If you want to have a potent graphic for what we're talking about, you can't just be blasting all the time. If you know the yin yang symbol, sorry, I can't put it up here on screen right now. The Taoist yin yang, you know, the white part is like activity, energy, up, open. The black would be yin, rest. You need both. You can't just go for it all the time. And this has always been a pet peeve, and a lot more for me, just in today's day and age, at least in my side of the world. It's just everything is like, you know, 24/7 is good, you know, all up all the time, you know, more is better, you know, carpe diem, you know, it's not that I don't like that saying, and that came from the Romans, I think, but you know, it's just, you're missing half the picture. It creates all sorts of chaos that has been worked around in our systems, in our world, but it's just being totally missed. I mean, God, we're missing half of the equation, and we're probably shortening our life by half if we're not resting at least a third of our lives, right? I mean, isn't that what it amounts to? Like literally 1/3 of your life, you should be asleep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it
good
says
sleep.
when your brain, your mind, like everything resets, everything heals. They say go to bed on empty stomach, right? So you can, your body
and ideally at 10 p.m. if
and
possible.
not digest. That's another thing I've been lacking doing lately, that my body's screaming at me like, don't eat right before bed. But I think another thing with sleep that a lot of people, at least with my clients I work with them on, is really understanding your own sleep cycle. So it's important to have, you know, sleep patterns, and some need 6 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep, 10 hours of sleep. And it's very unique. And some have different working hours. So we're said, oh, if you're, you know, early bird gets the worm, or whatever, like that is the saying. And I tried that for years, and I kept feeling like a failure because I couldn't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my body didn't want to operate that. And when I was a kid, my dad would get me up to go running at 5 o'clock, and we'd be at the horses by 6 o'clock, right? So I knew I could get up, but it was always a struggle. And when I really started to accept, like, okay, if I go to bed at 10 or 11 and I wake up at 8 a.m., my body's just happy. Like everything's happier. And so, yeah, early bird doesn't get the worm, but the night owl, who knows what the night owl gets? But I know I get something. So understanding that it's about the sleep and the quality of sleep that you're getting, not necessarily the times that you're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing I'd have to cross-check on that for myself to be satisfied is I do know that apparently your organs are working at different times, you know, according to Chinese medicine, which I do put faith in. Obviously, it's a huge topic, and oversimplified it even just in that term. But I have heard that your reset of your system does happen at a certain time in relation to the sun. I don't know about how much sleep you need, but the quality of sleep is certainly important. And the thing about times that I was saying I would need to cross-check to be more satisfied about is because I do put faith in Chinese medicine, which I was saying as well is an oversimplified term unto itself. But there's this aspect of when your organs are working, at what time, which I'm guessing would be in relation to the sun. That's why what time. And there is a reset of your system through a particular organ. I don't know if it's spleen, but it is happening at around 10 or 11. So I've heard be in deep sleep by 11 to get the best quality sleep possible.
I've heard that too. And the other thing is that every hour that you sleep before 12 counts as 2 hours of sleep to healing your body. I've heard that too. But if it doesn't work for you, like if you work in the restaurant industry, I have a client that works in the restaurant industry, and he has to be up to 1 or 2 o'clock, right? By the time he gets home. And then he needs time to like reset, right? So he was like, well, I'm not sleeping enough, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, why don't you just sleep until 1 or 2? And he's like, really? I can do that, right? So we eliminated that shame and that guilt and society's thing. And now he's getting better sleep. He's feeling better.
Exactly.
Right?
That's Yeah. That's well put. I mean, just like I was thinking, why is the world trying to have sex after having not slept all night? You know, I'm also saying, why is the world making it hard for us to be healthy? And really the best answer is what you said, like, you got to do what works for you. So, you sleep when you can, whenever works for you. And the point is get enough whenever you get it, however you get it. And the quality is important. So even if you slept, 10 hours in a day and you think you should have slept properly, therefore, but maybe the quality wasn't great. Maybe you were in REM the whole time, dreaming, which, mental activity. So not actually in deep sleep, and you feel like crap and you need more sleep, take it, So in short, what she said, folks.
What she said. Okay, so we have sex.
Sex we've talked about a bit, yeah? We
talked a little bit about it, but we didn't
sex.
Said we were going to talk about all three. So let's end on a juicy note.
Sure. Well, I call it the second hunger. I'll just start there. Because I mean, clearly one can live without it. That's what the Dalai Lama does, for example. Energy can be sublimated in many different ways, physically and otherwise. But I think for most people, it is needed in some capacity, some amount. And again, I could get into yoga and say, if you have this constitution, you're meant to have this amount of sex. For interest, I could go over it, but I think it'll probably come down to the same thing. You got to do what works for you. Certainly, obviously, only always consensually, and the quality of it is related to so much, well beyond even the individual, as related to food and sleep as well, like we talked about, but most obviously in relation to your relationship with the other person or people,
or self.
Well, and self. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's yourself and other. So it's that's part of, to me, what makes it such a beautiful topic, because it involves everything, and it really boils everything down to the point of contact. And I mean energetic, emotional contact. Yes, physical contact, but the encounter of sexuality. And I'm not limiting that to intercourse, but certainly also intercourse, especially intercourse, I'd say, and especially at the moment of, and maybe especially for guys, like orgasm, because few of us are very good at rolling as many times as women tend to be, or can be potentially more and more immediately than. So, so much is coming down to that point. If you're feeling off in some way, that's going to be felt by the other person. It's going to be felt like you. It's going to affect your experience. So it's really like all the lights are on in terms of where you're at in that given moment, in the realm of sexuality, which is what, to me, makes it such a powerful and the most powerful, arena of life, even though it's not all of life and you don't even need it to live.
It's my favorite too. It's why I'm teaching Reclaim Intimacy next week. I absolutely, yeah. So shameless plug there. If you want to come into my group, this is my private coaching group, but
No pun
Reclaim It
intended.
on
You said plug.
Facebook. We're going to do a February 15th. We're starting this workshop. It's a free workshop leading into my Paradise Awaits. And so understanding yourself sexually and really being able to define yourself sexually, I think is something that's been taken away from us by propaganda, really, and by the world. And bisexual abuse, I mean, 1 in 5 boys or girls, 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys. So I'm going to say 1 in 5 are abused. And then we have like sex sells and everything. And then we have the whole porn industry, and we have like, you know, there's so much sex going on, and what you should define, how you should define, and what's right and what's wrong, and all this stuff that nobody really has you stop and kind of go on a sex diet and figure out like, well, what do I like? What do I want? What's my personality? Who am I? How hungry am I? I didn't realize that until I was listening to our friend's talk on TED, Nicole's talk on TED, that I sent you. It was so funny. I sent that to you and I was like, look at this. And you're like, yeah, I told you about that months ago. I'm like, oh, but she called it hunger. And I've been calling it like, I'm hungry, right? Forever. And I didn't know where I got that. So knowing that I got that languaging from the Welcome Consensus cracks me up. But
All at one taste in this case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for the audience so they can track what we're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
cool.
yes, Nicole comes out of Welcome Consensus, but she created One Taste, which is how, or with a few others who came out of Welcome Consensus, created One Taste. So just in case,
Okay, so
for
that's
whomever,
the new version of it is One Taste. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So
and
but
no
what
one
I
knew
think
anymore. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, like recognizing your own hunger. Like what is, I think one of the things that we can start with everybody leaving this conversation with is like literally like how much do you need in all of these categories? Like how much good nutrition do you need, right? What is your natural body's rhythm to eat? What is your natural body's rhythm to sleep? And what's your natural body's rhythm for sex? Because we all have different appetites.
Right, because we all have different things going on at different times, at different stages of life, at different scenarios, you know, like you said, different jobs, different relationships, different commitments, different stress. So it's, you know, as harkens back to one of our earlier podcasts, things are changing all the time. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got to figure out what works for you in any given moment. And yes, thank you. Thanks all.
I love this conversation. Let us know if you want us to go deeper into it, you guys. I'll put the link for Paradise Awaits and Reclaim Intimacy below, as well as our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our YouTube page if you're listening on our podcast streams anywhere. Thank you so much for listening. We friggin' love you. We know we're new and fresh, but we want to hear from you and know that you're listening and what you think. So leave a comment and let us know. Talk to you soon.